Okay, lesson 78, graphing rational functions. So we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to continue on talking about finding the excluded value, which we've done in the past. We're going to learn about asymptotes and figure out how to find asymptotes. And from there, we will be able to graph these functions. So, one of the first things we need to know is that in order for us to figure out different things about rational functions, we want to get them into the form y equals a over x minus b plus c. And that sounds like a lot of just letters thrown together, I know, but as we go, this will make a lot more sense to you as we get rolling. So, first let's talk about excluded values. Now, we've talked about excluded values in the past, and we know that excluded values are values that make the function undefined. So let's just note that again. Excluded values. Make the function undefined. So like when you're dividing by 0, that's undefined, so that would make the function undefined. Whoops. Undefined, my bad. Undefined. Okay, so let's look at what that looks like. So if I have y equals m minus 4 over 3m minus 12. All I'm going to do is figure out what can m be that makes this function undefined. So I just take 3m minus 12 and set it equal to 0, because if that bottom piece equals 0, then the entire thing is undefined. So I'm going to add 12 to the other side, because I want to get this m by itself. So I have 3m equals 12, and then I need to divide by 3 to get rid of this 3 over here, and m equals 4. So this function is undefined at m equals 4. So for excluded values, all we do is take the bottom piece of this fraction right here, set it equal to 0, because that is how we make a function undefined, and we solve for the letter. Whatever we get, that is our answer. That is where the function is undefined. Okay, so now we're going to start talking a little bit about asymptotes. And to do that, we need to talk about discontinuous functions. So let's write this down. Discontinuous. Do I know how to spell this? I don't know how to spell anything. Discontinuous functions. And these are functions that have a break or a jump in the graph. So it's not one straight line. It's like two different pieces of line, or maybe more than two in some cases. So have a break or jump in the graph. Okay, so just for an example of this, in this case, they're going to look something like this. So we've got our coordinate plane here, and the lines are going to like kind of make an L shape, and then on the other side be reflected. So this would be discontinuous because it is one function that gets us both of these lines. So there's a break in the graph there. All the points aren't connected. Okay, so that brings us to asymptotes. This is a weird word to spell. Asymptotes are a boundary line that a graph of a function approaches but never crosses. So we're going to say boundary line a graph never crosses. So like in my example over here, there's an asymptote here because those two lines get close to that point, but they never cross that point. There's another one here because they get close to this point, but they never cross this point. Those are asymptotes. So I'm just going to underline that in yellow to remind us what that is. Okay, so let's talk about how to find these. Now, earlier I told you that you needed the rational functions to be in the form y equals a over x minus b plus c. So, with that in mind, let's look at asymptotes. So we've got y equals 2 over x minus 8. Okay, great. Now, what we know, because it's in the form y equals a over x minus b plus c, now keep in mind there's just an imaginary plus 0 out here. B and c are x and y asymptotes. So, B is the vertical asymptote. And this is always going to be x equals when we write it. So in this case, B is this 8. So we have one asymptote. At x equals 8. Okay, so C is our horizontal asymptote. And this is always going to be y equals. So in this case, C is this imaginary plus 0, so y equals 0 is our horizontal asymptote. Okay, it's a lot easier than you probably originally thought. Let's look at another one of these. If I have y equals 4 over x plus 10 plus 3. Right away we've got b is 10, c is 3. Okay, so we know b is our x asymptote, so we're going to say x equals, now in the original equation it's x minus b, so if this is positive we have to switch the sign, so it's actually negative 10, and our other asymptote would be y equals 3. So remember, in the original equation it's y equals a over x minus b plus c. Since that in this original this is minus, when it changes to a plus over here, that means that x is a negative, the x asymptote. Okay, so we always flip the sign on b. Those are the two things we need to know in order to be able to graph these. We know that there are excluded values where we just set the denominator equal to 0. We know what asymptotes are, and we know how to find them. So, as long as we can put points into an equation and graph them, we are set. So, you should have everything you need to go ahead and start the homework.